Hi, I'm Hobie1. This is Red Share Reading. Glasses. Check. Today we are reading the Black Book of Secrets along the American River. Chapter 31, The Reluctant Messenger. Let's go. Down at the Pickled Trout, Benjamin Tupp was struggling to cope with his customers' demands. He had never had to deal with a full tavern before, and tonight the place was heaving with the villagers, some of whom, such as Perigo Leafbinder, had never even been over the threshold. They sat and stood and leaned and perched on every available surface in a tight circle, somehow managing at the same time to hold on to a mug or a jug of ale. Joe Bright was the only one who was reasonably comfortable, having taken center stage on a rickety, ale-stained table. "Fellow villagers," he boomed to the excited and slightly tipsy crowd, "I say the time has come to take back what is rightfully ours. You all saw Horatio this afternoon, a braver man I have never seen. The way he held on to that turkey is something I will not forget for the rest of my years." Horatio blushed at the praise and staggered under the slapping hands that rained down on his back. He covered his ears as deafening cheers rattled his brain. "But this is only the beginning," continued Job. "All this time we thought it was Jeremiah who was the source of our misfortune, but now we know he is merely the lackey of Joe Zabbidou. Sterling was right. Joe is the devil, and he is playing his evil games with us. Is there any of us here who can say we are not in his debt?" "We all owe him," they shouted back, "each and every one of us." "He had us fooled," said Job grimly, "but it's not too late. We can still stop him." Only one voice dissented, and that belonged to Polly. She jumped up on the table and stood in front of Job. The villagers were surprised into an uneasy silence. "Don't listen to this," she urged. "It's not Joe we have to worry about. It's Jeremiah. Joe helped you all. Why are you doing this to him?" Some of the villagers, the more sober among them, murmured that Polly had a point. "The girl's right," said Lily Weaver. "Shouldn't we deal with Jeremiah first?" Elias Sourdoff then climbed up onto the table, which now shook alarmingly. "No," he said, "it's Joe needs sortin', and if you want proof, listen to this." He reached into his pocket and took out a piece of paper and read from it. "If you won't keep your secret, leave 5 shillings at the church gates tonight, and I'll say nuffin." The crowd gasped. "Yes," said Elias, "a blackmail letter left secretly in my shop, no doubt by Ludlow, and written by none other than Joe Zabbidou. And this is only the beginning. Who will be blackmailed next?" The villagers needed no more convincing, and outside the tavern, hidden in the shadows, with his ear pressed up against the window, Jeremiah Ratchet also heard what Elias had to say. As he listened, an ugly, wet-lipped smirk spread across his fleshy cheeks. Now he knew everything. Polly's heart sank. "I've got to tell Ludlow," she thought, creeping out of the tavern and darting away up the hill. She rapped loudly on the pawnbroker's door until Ludlow finally let her in and brought her through to the back room. Polly stood uncomfortably in front of the fire, twitching and wringing her hands. Her face was pale, and she licked her lips nervously. "What can I do for you, my dear?" asked Joe evenly. "There's something I've got to tell you." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Something I think you should know." In the corner, Ludlow paled. What could she mean? "Don't tell him what we did," he urged silently. "I want to help you." She was almost apologetic, and then the words tumbled out all over each other. I'm here to warn you. I think you are in danger. Since the turkey fight, everyone's been in the Pickled Trout. They're all so angry. I've heard some awful threats. Something dreadful is going to happen. I just know it." "To me or to Ratchet?" murmured Joe. The answer was clear in Polly's eyes. "Now that everyone knows what you do at midnight, they're all talking about the Black Book. They think you used magic to charm their secrets out of them." "Magic?" Joe raised his eyebrows in mild surprise. "Obadiah said you gave him an enchanted potion to loosen his tongue." Joe's eyes widened. "What pyretic brains people have. It's nothing more than brandy to calm their nerves. Job says you paid all that money so they'd always be in your debt. He says you're trying to take over from Jeremiah Ratchet." "He's just a troublemaker," tutted Joe dismissively. "So the villagers have taken a dislike to me because I paid them too much? This is madness. They judge you by the standards they know, and all they know is Jeremiah Ratchet. You promised things." "No," he interrupted sharply. "He never promised. Polly corrected herself. They believe you promised them help, but now you've fallen back on your word. Like Ratchet, she paused for a second. And then there was the letter. Letter? Joe and Ludlow spoke in unison. Polly shifted uncomfortably. I didn't believe it until Elias Sourdough showed it to everyone in the tavern. He read it out. It's a blackmail letter. He says it's from you. It says, you want 5 shillings at the church gates tonight to keep quiet about his secret. So that's why they wouldn't talk to me, exclaimed Ludlow. Yes, said Polly hurriedly, and if you want to win back their trust, then you have to show that you're on their side. Before they do something terrible. Whose side do they think I am on? She didn't answer, just nodded down the hill. Tell me, said Joe, in a voice that was strangely flat. How do I prove otherwise? What would they have me do with Jeremiah? Maybe you could give the brandy, to Jeremiah. And if I do, what then? Polly looked a little embarrassed. Under the influence of the brandy, he is bound to admit to a terrible crime, and then you can blackmail him back. I snorted loudly. Joe would never do something as underhanded as that. This is beyond belief, thundered Joe. Blackmail is not my business. I'm sorry, Mr. Zabbidou, said Polly quickly, shrinking back against the fireplace. I'm only trying to help. Everyone's so angry with you. I just thought you should know. What of Jeremiah? Asked Joe suddenly. What does he know of this? Polly shook her head. I don't know, maybe nothing, but I'm sure he's up to something too. He had one of the Sourdough boys in his study the other day. I just wish I knew why. Joe shook his head wearily and leaned against the mantel. How it saddens me to see how quickly men turn upon each other. Polly looked desperately at Ludlow. Please be careful, she said, and then she was gone. Well, that's the end of chapter 31. Thank you for joining me. I'll catch you again in chapter 32.